Tales of Herding Gods, Chapter 4 and 43, Chapter R. A ruined city lay buried within the endless desert. The yellow earth palaces that had once stood proudly were now broken and scattered. More than half of them had collapsed long ago, leaving behind only crumbling fences and battered walls that groaned beneath the weight of time. Yet, among the ruins, flames burned fiercer than elsewhere, licking the air like restless spirits. The ancient ruins stretched across an enormous expanse, vast as thousands of cultivated fields laid side by side. Firelight flickered across the sands, illuminating the towering form of a sand giant whose entire body glowed scarlet beneath the blazing flames. Though it possessed no legs, the colossal creature moved with terrifying speed, gliding through the grand streets and narrow alleys of the ruined city like a storm sweeping across the desert. Beneath the sand giant churned a furious vortex of spinning sand. The grains whirled upward violently, forming a roiling pillar that supported the giant's body and propelled it forward. Thus, even without legs, the creature's speed remained astonishingly swift. At that moment, the sand giant was relentlessly pursuing Chinmu and Pangong So. The two figures dashed through the shattered ruins while thunderous blows rang again and again behind them. Every strike of the sand giant carried incomparably terrifying force. When its fists slammed into the desert floor, sandstone burst outward like flying swords. And yet, the sand giant did not damage the ruins themselves. Whenever it encountered broken fences or crumbling walls, its body would simply surge over them like flowing sand. Once it had passed, the fragile structures remained perfectly intact. The divine arts practiced in West Earth differed greatly from those of eternal peace. Their path followed the doctrine that all things possessed spirit and soul. Even mere sandstone could be transformed into a towering warrior capable of battle. A single blow from such a sand giant could cleave mountains apart. Its might was overwhelming and unstoppable. If Chinmu or Pangong So were struck directly, the terrifying force alone would be enough to grievously injure them. Even under such danger, the two men continued attempting to kill each other while desperately evading the attacks of the sand giant. Pangong So's broken arm greatly hindered his movements. Chinmu could command 8,000 flying swords, yet no matter how intricate his sword techniques were, harming the sand giant remained extremely difficult. Even if he shattered one of its arms into scattered sand, the giant would restore itself moments later, as though it had never been injured. Its movement technique was extraordinary, and its strikes were tyrannically overbearing. Yet because it relied only on brute fists rather than casting spells or divine arts, it was not entirely impossible for them to avoid. What puzzled Chinmu, however, was that the sand giant appeared to focus its attacks solely upon him. Pangong So was almost completely ignored. Spell of true heaven palace. The dragon Chillin muttered as it glanced around anxiously. Where is the spellcaster hiding? That's a guardian of the desert. It's not a divine art. Xiongqier climbed onto the dragon Chillin's head, tugging at its mane while peering toward the battlefield. My mother once said that many ancient ruins lie hidden in this desert. Long ago, the gods who protected the desert lived in these places. When they departed, they left guardians behind to watch over the desert. Anyone from the great ruins who enters here will be attacked by those guardians. Just then, the red sand within the ruins suddenly surged violently. Another sand giant rose from the ground, rushing directly toward the young man. Chinmu spread both hands outward, and countless scarlet sand dragons roared into existence. They whistled through the air as they charged toward the sand giants. While pursuing Pangong So, his vital qi had been circulating faster and faster, its momentum rising like a raging river. The power of his divine art had grown increasingly terrifying. At this moment, his combat strength had reached its peak. Dozens of crimson sand dragons lunged forward and tore the sand giants apart. Eh? Chinmu's expression changed in surprise. He could clearly feel the magic power within his divine art being devoured. As the sand dragons passed through the sand giants' bodies, the magical energy within them completely vanished. Seizing the opportunity, Pangong So rushed forward with the enormous cauldron hovering above his head. Behind him, the two sand giants that had absorbed the magic power from Chinmu's divine art, and the dozens of sand dragons themselves, grew dramatically larger and turned to attack Chinmu as well. Chin-Mu clenched his fist and extended his thumb straight outward. His fist shot forward to meet Pan Gong-so's strike. Pan Gong-so instantly felt the power of his own attack vanish. Instead, an invisible concave force surged within Chin-Mu's fist, dragging him inward. The sight of Chin-Mu's extended thumb sent a chill down Pan Gong-so's spine. The true power of that punch lies in the thumb. He struggled desperately to break free. Only now did he realize that Chin-Mu's move was not a fist technique at all. It was a sword technique. Chin-Mu's thumb served as the sword itself. If Pan Gong-so failed to escape and the thumb pressed down, the sword power would slice him cleanly in half. How did this fellow's battle techniques become so terrifying so quickly? It hasn't even been a year since our last fight. How could his abilities have grown so much? Summoning all his strength, Pan Gong-so finally tore himself free from Chin-Mu's fist. At the moment he escaped, the sword light gathering at Chin-Mu's thumb surged explosively. His vital chi condensed into threads as fine as silk, intertwining like countless tiny swords. When Chin-Mu pressed his thumb downward, the sword light slashed toward Pan Gong-so. Pan Gong-so instantly transformed into a shadow that collapsed onto the sandy ground, sticking to it like ink. He then fled rapidly into the distance. Chin-Mu raised his hand and pressed downward. A massive handprint appeared on the desert floor. Pan Gong-so sighed with relief. He missed. Yet in the next instant, the countless sword lights hidden throughout the heavens and earth began to hum together. They shot downward simultaneously, covering an enormous area that left Pan Gong-so no space to evade. Suddenly, a third sand giant erupted from beneath Chin-Mu's feet. The descending rain of swords immediately became chaotic and disordered. Pan Gong-so burst free from his shadow form and transformed back into human shape as he leapt from the desert. Flashing rapidly through the battlefield, he dodged the sword lights and escaped the ruins. He turned his head back to glance behind him, only to see Chin-Mu swallowed by 3 sand giants. Whether he lived or died could no longer be determined. If this guy ends up severely injured, that will be the perfect chance for me to kill him. Pan Gong-so thought coldly. Just then, he saw the Dragon Qilin charging toward him and sneered. Even a beast like you dares to challenge me? He bowed slightly and shouted sternly, "Fatty dragon!" Behind him, a huge sacrificial altar suddenly appeared, and the devil god standing upon it also bowed deeply. The Dragon Qilin ignored him completely. Pan Gong-so grew slightly flustered. He hurriedly bowed again. "Dragon Qilin!" But the Dragon Qilin was already rushing toward him, flames spilling from its mouth. Pan Gong-so spat out blood. His injuries were already severe, and the divine art of bowing to souls consumed enormous vitality. Performing the ritual twice had already drained much of his strength. Ching! Pan Gong-so clenched his teeth and bowed once more. Xiang Qier grabbed the Dragon Qilin's mane and climbed onto the fat creature's head, staring curiously at the young man before them. Pan Gong-so spat another mouthful of blood just as a blazing beam of fire erupted from the Dragon Qilin's mouth. The torrent of flames swept across more than 10 miles of desert. Wherever the fire passed, dunes collapsed and flattened into scorched ground. Pan Gong-so hurriedly hid inside the great cauldron as the deafening impact echoed across the desert. The cauldron was blasted into the air and sent tumbling dozens of miles away. The Dragon Qilin sprinted toward the spot where the cauldron landed, but found only a pit of sand marked with bloodstains. It was clear that Pan Gong-so had escaped underground. My abilities actually couldn't stop him? Anyone who can live 10,000 years is indeed extraordinary. His ability to escape is even better than Cult Master's. The Dragon Qilin exclaimed in admiration. A thunderous explosion suddenly erupted from the ruins. The Dragon Qilin turned its head to look and saw a 4th sand giant rising from the ground. The creature towered 100 yards high, its height rivaling the 10,000 Buddha's pagoda of Great Thunderclap Monastery. It moved with terrifying speed as it relentlessly pursued Chin-Mu. "I can't let Cult Master come to harm." The Dragon Qilin immediately dashed toward the battlefield. Yet just as it arrived, Chin-Mu's body suddenly vanished. In the next moment, he appeared floating before the Dragon Qilin in midair. Strange flames covered his entire body, while countless teleportation runes circulated rapidly around him. Chin-Mu hurriedly extinguished the flames burning across his body. His face had already been scorched black by the heat. Fortunately, the clothes he wore had been specially crafted by Yu Zhaoqing and other powerful members of the Heavenly Feather Race, otherwise they would have already been reduced to ashes. A series of thunderous sounds echoed behind him. Qin turned back and saw that the sand giants had actually flown out of the ruins and were rushing toward him with ferocious speed. "Fatty dragon, fall back!" Qin waved his hand to halt the dragon Qilin's advance. The sand giants moved with terrifying swiftness and quickly arrived before him. They swayed briefly before dividing into two groups, launching a pincer attack from both sides. Just as they were about to pounce, the teleportation runes surrounding Qin flared brightly, and his body vanished once again. The sand giants collided violently with one another, sending clouds of sand erupting into the sky. Soon afterward, they reformed their shapes and hurried back toward the ruins in frantic haste. Yet before they could return, their bodies suddenly collapsed, transforming once more into simple dunes of piled sand. The dragon Qilin quickly ran to where Qin floated in midair. Beneath him lay a palace that had collapsed by more than half. Inside the structure stood a shrine. Within it rested a wooden statue of a god carved with strange markings. Its head had fallen onto the ground. Qin raised his hand, and carefree sword flew into his grasp, his gaze fixed upon the fallen head of the wooden god statue with a grim expression. Earlier, when he had lured the sand giants away, he had secretly returned to the ruins and used Cinnabar Heaven's eyes to observe the surroundings. At that moment, he discovered strange markings continuously flowing across the wooden statue's surface. With a single decisive strike, he had severed the statue's head. After the head was cut off, the glowing markings gradually dimmed. A terrifying brainwave surged out from the statue toward Qin, yet it was blocked by the jade pendant hanging around his neck. "How strange," Qin murmured. Turning his head, he asked, "Cheer, does West Earth's West Heaven Palace have gods?" Xiang Cheer shook her head. "I've never heard of such a thing." Qin gripped the jade pendant tightly and said in a low voice, "There is a consciousness hidden within this statue. It even attacked me when I severed its head. The owner of this statue should still be alive." "Cult Master Pangongso escaped," the dragon Qilin reported. Qin showed no concern. "That fellow has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of escape. Killing him in one attempt is not so easy. Didn't he also escape when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor surrounded Roland's Golden Palace? What troubles me is something else. There may be a living god within West Earth's True Heaven Palace." He lifted his gaze toward the western horizon. The wooden statue had been able to gather sand and shape it into giants. This meant it had been using the supreme art of True Heaven Palace. It was known as the 10,000 Spirit Nature Technique, a cultivation art especially suited for women. Although Xiang Xiu had taught it to Qin, his progress with it had been limited. "The Imperial Preceptor has already gone to True Heaven Palace. I fear he may run into trouble." Qin thought silently. "I only hope the god's power is not too terrifying. Otherwise—" He slowly shook his head. "What troubles me even more," he muttered, "is why the god of True Heaven Palace left this ruined palace behind. These sand giants are clearly meant to kill the abandoned people of the Great Ruins. What did True Heaven Palace originally look like?" He leapt onto the dragon Qilin's back, and the great beast sprinted toward the west. Soon they had covered more than 10 miles. Silence returned to the ruins. Yet after a moment, faint rustling sounds echoed through the broken palace. The markings carved into the two separated pieces of wood slowly began to glow once more. The statue's head suddenly rose into the air and settled back upon the neck of the body. The glowing markings grew brighter and brighter. The sculpture began to change. Its wooden body slowly transformed into flesh and blood. Even more horrifying. The statue twisted its head around until it faced backward along its spine. Its eyes slowly opened, gazing in the direction where Qin had departed. The wooden statue opened its mouth and spoke in a hoarse voice. "A noble among the abandoned people. Swoosh!" A streak of sword light tore across the desert sky, skimming just above the ground before piercing directly through the head of the transforming statue. In the next instant, the sword light flashed brilliantly, slicing the wooden god statue into countless fragments. Some time later, 20 miles away, the sword light returned silently to Qin Mu's scabbard. Standing atop the dragon Qilin's head with his arms folded, Qinmu rose and fell gently with the creature's stride. "God," he said calmly, "I've already killed a few of your kind before." Translator Ninetales, Editor Darkgem. As the sun sank toward the western horizon, the blazing desert was dyed in waves of crimson flame. Qinmu sat astride the dragon Qilin's head like a wandering swordsman riding the winds, circulating vermilion bird vital qi through his meridians as he forged and tempered each of his flying swords. Streams of scarlet qi flowed like firebirds across the blades as he engraved deeper rune markings upon them. Lowering his gaze, he noticed that Xiang Xier had already drifted into deep slumber inside the dragon Qilin's ear. There was no rushing wind within that sheltered hollow, and the dragon Qilin carefully folded the edges of its ear to shield the little girl with utmost gentleness. "Fatty Dragon is really not bad," Qinmu praised silently in his heart. "This Fatty is actually quite meticulous. The taste of Scarlet Fire Spirit pills and Fire Element Divine Vitality pills is indeed not that good. I should improve it for him once we find a place to land." "Cult Master, there's an oasis ahead," the dragon Qilin suddenly called out. Qinmu lifted his head and gazed toward the horizon. Sure enough, a patch of green shimmered within the endless sea of fire-colored dunes. "I wonder if there's water there. I can endure another day without water. But I'm afraid for cheer." The flaming desert burned with merciless heat, and the air itself held not the slightest trace of moisture. Even when Qinmu shifted his qi to Black Tortoise Vital Qi, he still could not draw forth water from the surroundings. In the past, the problem of water had never troubled him, but now that Xiangqier traveled by his side, he could no longer ignore it. Before long, the dragon Qilin descended upon the oasis. Beside the quiet lake stood several snow-white goatskin tents, their pale hides glowing faintly beneath the dying light of sunset. Travelers dressed in the garments of West Earth had already lit their fires and were cooking their evening meals. The dragon Qilin surveyed the surroundings cautiously before speaking in a low voice. "I wonder if Pangong So escaped here. Cult Master, be careful. He's severely injured, so he couldn't have run far." Qinmu leapt lightly down from the dragon Qilin's head and gently opened its ear. With a smile, he lifted out the sleeping Xiangxier. "Don't worry, since I'm here, even if he's nearby, he won't dare to come out. If he decides to show up, it will just make it more convenient for me to get rid of him." The tribesmen of West Earth wore embroidered headbands tied across their foreheads. The moment they saw the newcomers arrive, their expressions changed drastically, yet none of them dared to utter a single word. Qinmu slowly swept his gaze across the camp. He noticed that there were far more men than women among the group, their skin darkened and reddened by years beneath the ruthless sun. Nearby grazed several two-legged yellow gazelles, strange beasts used to carry goods, along with piles of merchandise scattered around the oasis. From the look of things, the group was most likely a caravan of traveling merchants. Though the two-legged gazelles possessed great speed and tremendous strength for carrying burdens, riding them was an exceedingly bumpy affair. For that reason, only merchants were willing to endure the discomfort of traveling upon such peculiar beasts. Even though riding the two-legged gazelles was uncomfortable, they could transport far more goods. Qinmu walked toward an elderly merchant and spoke politely. "Elder, my little sister is asleep. Could I borrow a tent?" The elderly merchant nodded immediately. "Help yourself." Qinmu offered his thanks and carried the girl into one of the tents. The nights of the desert were bitterly cold, so the goatskin tent provided fortunate shelter from the chill. Inside were also several thick blankets made of goat fur. Qinmu carefully tucked Xiangqier beneath the blankets. The girl remained half asleep and dazed, her tiny hands clutching the soft fur as she smacked her lips twice. She must have been hungry, yet she did not awaken. Qinmu stepped back outside the tent and discovered that the sun had already disappeared beyond the horizon. Beside the crackling bonfire, he asked, "Elder, you guys are merchants from West Earth?" Everyone present glanced nervously at Qinmu's face, yet did not dare to respond. Only the elderly merchant, who seemed to be the leader, found the courage to speak. "We are from West Earth and are going to Great Ruins to do business. Is Big Brother from Great Ruins?" Qinmu fell silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. Although he had grown fairly tall, he was far from deserving the title of Big Brother. The merchant's fear likely came from the flame markings upon his face. From those markings, they had already guessed that he came from Great Ruins. I'm indeed from Great Ruins, and I plan to go to West Earth. Chinmu retrieved some fresh beef and fruit from his Tao-tea sack and presented them to the merchant with a smile. Elder, thank you for letting my little sister have a place to rest. If Elder doesn't mind, you can just call me Little Chin. The old merchant could not refuse and had no choice but to accept the gift. I don't dare to be called Elder. The position of us men in West Earth is slightly lower. Only senior women are deserved to be called elders. Brother Chin, you are a person of Great Ruins, so it is not really good for you to go to West Earth. This flame desert stretches for tens of thousands of miles, and there is blazing fire all along the way. Also, this fire poses numerous dangers to the people of Great Ruins, so it'd be best for you to return. Chinmu shook his head. I've made a promise to go to West Earth, so how can I break it? Women are the ones who call the shots in West Earth? Eternal Peace Empire also has women generals and officials. Back when Imperial Preceptor was pushing for equality between men and women, he met quite some opposition, so I would have never expected you guys to be even more open than Eternal Peace. The old merchant's expression changed immediately, and he hurriedly hushed him. Shush! You can't say equality between men and women, or you will be executed. How can men and women be equal? Women can give birth, men can't give birth. So, of course, the men are a class lower. Chinmu was completely stunned. The old merchant looked around cautiously and lowered his voice. When you reach West Earth, don't say this kind of muddle-headed words. Of course. That's if you can survive your journey there. Chinmu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When you reach West Earth, don't say you are from Great Ruins. The old merchant added with grave seriousness. If you say you are from Great Ruins, you will soon be removed. Chinmu frowned slightly. Why so? The old merchant was unwilling to elaborate further, and Chinmu did not press the matter. Instead, he continued circulating his vital qi to refine his flying swords. Whenever his cultivation became half exhausted, he swallowed several spirit pills to restore his strength. Under his repeated tempering, the flying swords grew smaller and smaller. I'm still lacking compared to Grandpa Mute, able to refine swords into flowing water. Chinmu seized a flying sword in his hands and rubbed it between his palms. The blade gradually shrank into a tiny sword pellet, yet its surface still contained several small protrusions. He executed Carefree Sword, and 8,000 swords collided together with thunderous clanging before compressing into a single sword pellet. Although it had become far smaller than before, it still measured nearly 2 feet across. Only when he could refine the sword pellet until it was the size of a thumb could his refinement technique be considered improved. At that point, he would truly be able to refine swords into flowing water. Chinmu dispersed the sword pellet and grasped the mother blade. Carefree Sword. Nearly 8,000 flying swords came whistling through the air one after another, merging with the mother sword. Carefree Sword grew heavier and heavier. When the final sword fused into it, Chinmu's arm trembled violently. The sword had become incredibly heavy, though he could still manage to lift it. He attempted a swing. Though the motion was painfully slow, thunderous crackling bursts and trembling hums echoed through the heavens. It felt as though a towering mountain had descended from the sky. The explosive sound came from the sheer heaviness of the sword compressing the surrounding space. After swinging Carefree Sword twice, Chinmu's arms were already aching with exhaustion. He immediately dispersed the child's swords and stopped tormenting himself further. Those dragon language writings on Emperor's Disc and the True Dragon's Nest are really not bad. The 9 Dragons Monarch technique on them is improving my corporeal body at an extremely fast speed. I'd had no chance to lift this sword in the past. What a pity I still can't figure out many parts of the dragon language on them. During the past few days, he had been attempting to fuse 9 Dragons Monarch technique with Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique, causing his corporeal body to strengthen at an astonishing pace. In the past, he had only cultivated the body refinement techniques within the great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, yet the raw strength of his physical body alone had already surpassed the divine arts of most practitioners. If he unleashed battle techniques such as Thunderclap 8 Strikes or Pig Slaughter Knife, their might would multiply several times over. The strength of the corporeal body had an extraordinary influence upon battle techniques. One by one, the merchants of West Earth retired into their tents to sleep. Chinmu remained seated beside the lake while the dragon Qilin shrank his size and requested the dragon-rearing scriptures from him. The beast lay beside Chinmu and used the desert flames as illumination while reading. Fatty dragon, this fellow has started to put in effort like Linger. Chinmu thought happily. The dragon Qilin licked his claws and carefully flipped open the dragon-rearing scriptures. As he studied the text, a thought arose within his mind. Dragon-rearing sovereign wrote dragon-rearing scriptures, so I also want to write my own human-rearing scriptures. Not long afterward, Chinmu reclined upon the dragon Qilin's body and gradually drifted into sleep. The dragon Qilin lowered his head as well. Though the desert burned with flames even at night, the temperature had dropped drastically. The surface of the lake froze solid, but the dragon Qilin's body radiated warmth. From time to time, small bursts of flame puffed from his nostrils. Near midnight, amid the burning sands beyond the oasis, Pangong-so slowly dug his way up from underground. He gazed at the sleeping Chinmu and hesitated briefly. Should he seize this moment to approach and kill that fellow? Chinmu breathed steadily, completely unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Pangong-so hesitated once more. Just as he prepared to strike a fatal blow, he noticed strands of dragon chi drifting from the Taodi sack each time Chinmu inhaled and exhaled. The strands resembled slender dragons coiling through the air around him. Pangong-so then saw Chinmu's hand resting inside the Taodi sack, and his heart suddenly trembled. Without warning, he changed his mind, turned around, and sank back into the earth. He noticed? Chinmu opened one eye and glanced around before closing it again. He withdrew the hand that had been resting in the Taodi sack and continued guiding the dragon within the true dragon's nest while softly snoring. This time, he had truly fallen asleep. Threads of true dragon chi flowed into his body, nourishing his vital chi and steadily raising his cultivation. Over the past several months, Chinmu had relied on the true dragon's nest and the Emperor's Disc to cultivate, allowing his strength to rise at astonishing speed. Even Pangong-so, who had reincarnated more than 10 times, could not surpass him. Of course, the most crucial factor remained his frequent dual cultivation of primordial spirit with Ling Yuxiu and Si Yunxiang. The practice benefited him greatly, preventing his cultivation from falling behind Pangong-so, who had already entered Seven Stars' realm. At dawn, Xiangqier awakened and immediately complained that she was starving. Chinmu minced lean meat and vegetables to cook her a pot of porridge. He also prepared some pastries before refining several improved spirit pills for the dragon Qilin. My human-rearing scriptures will definitely succeed, the dragon Qilin thought confidently. Cultmaster thought he succeeded in cultivating dragon-rearing scriptures, but he has no idea that he's in the grasp of my human-rearing scriptures. When the caravan prepared to depart, the old merchant bid Chinmu farewell and repeated his warning. Brother Qin must never say that you are from Great Ruins, otherwise there will be great trouble. Chinmu thanked him before stepping onto the dragon Qilin's forehead and riding westward. Behind him, the bells around the gazelles' necks jingled softly as the caravan traveled east toward Great Ruins with their goods. The dragon Qilin moved swiftly, yet even after running until evening, they still could not reach West Earth. As they passed a towering mountain, Chinmu glanced at it several times. In the next moment, the dragon Qilin had already rushed past it. "Fatty dragon, go back!" Chinmu suddenly said. The dragon Qilin was puzzled, but immediately obeyed. Chinmu carefully examined the mountain and discovered that it was extraordinarily majestic. No flames burned upon its slopes. Chinmu quickly ascended to its peak. The summit was vast and covered with broken fences and crumbling walls. From the ruins alone, Chinmu could imagine the magnificent sight it must have been when the structures still stood tall. Several dried corpses lay buried in the sand. Chinmu examined them and discovered they were giants with unusually tall and sturdy bodies. He walked to a stone pillar and touched it. Beside the pillar lay several thick chains. "Cultmaster, What's with this mountain? The dragon Qilin asked as he flew over on clouds of flame. Qinmu raised his finger and pointed toward the distant desert. Look over there. The dragon Qilin followed the direction of his finger and saw a pitch-black sphere lying amidst the windswept sands. It's Sunship, a dead sunship. Qinmu disembarked from the vessel with an expressionless face. Let's go. The dragon Qilin glanced at Qinmu's expression and did not dare to ask any further questions. Instead, he carried him onward toward the west. Soon afterward, they encountered another enormous vessel, a shattered moonship. After that, they discovered a third gigantic ship half buried in the desert sands. This moonship had endured an extremely fierce battle and was even more ruined. Qinmu suddenly came to a realization. 10,000 spirit nature technique is the bane of sunship and moonship.